We are now starting our fifth session to get into the detail of how the world's cities can deliver the emission reductions we all need. We heard this morning that the energy and building sectors are the largest, are the most important for decarbonization. They are challenging sectors, but their size offers a real opportunity. If mayors get their policies right, they will have a huge impact. In this session, we're going to hear from 4 leading cities just about that. But before, we have the privilege of a quick masterclass in the global energy picture from Dr. Amory Lovins. He's the co-founder and chief scientist of the Rocky Mountain Institute. Dr. Lovins is an eminent physicist who has taught all around the world, from Oxford to Stanford, and advised major firms and governments in over 60 countries, leading Time magazine to name him one of the most influential people. To paraphrase Time's reasoning, Amory Lovins had the solution to the energy problem in 1976. It's taken the rest of the world 40 years to catch up with him. Today, he will share with us his insights. So please welcome Dr. Lovins to the stage.
Muchas gracias. Amigas y amigos, thank you for the honor of summarizing some elements of the energy transformation that we are creating together. Both technology and design are moving energy efficiency into fast forward. Prior lighting improvements are being swept away as LEDs each decade get 30 times more efficient, 20 times brighter, and 10 times cheaper. What else changes this fast? Well, LEDs inside out are PVs, photovoltaics, and in the past 5 years, their meteorite strike has made solar power cost... What? In the past 5 years, photovoltaics meteorite strike has made solar power cost less than the fossil fuels fed into US power stations. Those are the dashed lines. And wind power, the lower aqua curve, often makes old coal, gas, and nuclear plants shut down as uneconomic to run. Plummeting costs have given renewables over half the world market for new electric capacity. US wholesale electricity prices now generally exceed the average fixed prices of both wind power and solar power contracts, despite their smaller and briefer subsidies than non-renewables. The stars at the far right, how unsubsidized wind and solar are winning in global markets like Mexico. And these solar prices can now be matched by district or community scale solar power. Also, local renewables, resiliently connected in microgrids, can work with or without the grid, improving national security and public safety. Renewables plus super efficiency yield affordable net zero energy or net positive energy buildings. But at least as important as technologies is how we choose and combine them, that is, design, especially if we optimize buildings as whole systems for multiple benefits, not as isolated components for single benefits. Such integrative design is how our 2010 retrofit saved 2/5 of the Empire State Building's energy. Remanufacturing its 6,514 windows on site into super windows that pass light but block heat, plus better lights and office equipment and so on, cut the maximum cooling load by 1/3. Then renovating smaller chillers rather than adding bigger chillers saved $17 million of capital cost, paying for most of the improvements and cutting the payback to 3 years, or under 1 year if we had counted non-energy benefits to the owner or the tenants. This works from Antarctica to sweltering India, where Rohan Parikh's 1.5 million square meters of offices use 4/5 less energy, cost 10 or 20% less to build, and work better. Careful shading delivers glare-free daylighting throughout, because if anyone complains of glare and demands blinds, the architect doesn't get paid. India has at least 1 trillion watts of electricity saving potential, not yet even analyzed, including passively cooled and commercially successful apartment towers. Integrative design can save even more and much cheaper if coordinated with routine renewals of facade and mechanicals. In 1994, a 20-year-old office in a severe summer and winter climate needed a new curtain wall. And reglazing, not with like, but with super windows, plus the other usual improvements, could cut the peak cooling load by 3/4. Then replacing the aging HVAC system with a new one, 4 times more efficient and 4 times smaller, could save more capital than all the improvements cost, saving 3/4 of the energy with a tiny net investment and a roughly minus 5-month payback compared to the routine renovation that saves nothing. The cases and tools posted at retrofitdepot.org can help achieve this right timing for your city. Now, in both new and retrofit offices, integrative design has about doubled the efficiency target in 5 years. That 38% saving in the Empire State Building seemed pretty good until our cost-effective Denver retrofit saved 70%, making this half-century-old government office more efficient than the best new U.S. office, which in turn is only half as efficient as our own new net positive, no mechanicals office. And yet its technologies were all available over a decade ago. What has mainly improved is not technology, but design. And this super efficient 3-story German office and apartment is said to use 3/5 less energy than our new office. It produces on its roof nearly 5 times as much electricity as it uses. So could a nearly 14-story building this efficient be net zero without even using solar walls or windows? Let's build one and see. But certainly a building as efficient as Seattle's Bullitt Center can entirely power a 5-story office building in Seattle or 8 stories in Los Angeles, just from rooftop solar cells. Net zero or even net positive buildings like these now exist, even in difficult climates like Norway's, generally with good economics and some buildings of 20 stories or higher. The same design techniques also work in homes. I live 2,200 meters up in the Rocky Mountains near Aspen, where outdoor temperatures used to dip as low as minus 44 Celsius. But my house does no combustion, that's so 20th century, and it has no heating system. Super insulation, ventilation, heat recovery, and super windows that insulate like 16 sheets of glass, but look like 2 and cost less than 3, make it 99% passive solar heated. 5,000-year-old North Chinese passive solar technology. And eliminating the heating system more than paid up front for the efficiency that displaced the heating system. Now, without looking like this, the 40,000 plus European passive buildings that it helped to inspire do the same thing, often at about normal cost. The central atrium that my house wraps around is now ripening its 67th passive solar banana crop with no furnace. In 1984, this house saved 99% of its space and water heating energy, 90% of its electricity, and half the water, all with a 10-month payback. Now our retrofitted lights and appliances use less electricity than their monitoring equipment. Such integrative design works from my subarctic climate to Bangkok, where a similar approach has saved 90% of home air conditioning energy with normal cost and better comfort. Wherever you are, though, integrative design gives many benefits from each expenditure. For example, the white arch that holds up the middle of my house across the top of the lower photograph has 12 different functions, but it has only one cost. In Holland, integrative design makes public housing retrofit super efficient also, soon cheaply enough to finance entirely from saved energy without subsidy. This whole industrialized retrofit package has proven installable in a single day and is now spreading to other countries. And meanwhile, the electric car revolution will create cleaner air and cheaper batteries. Cheap batteries plus rooftop solar power can take half of US electricity companies' revenues in the 2020s. Adding flexible loads can then give customers more market power than suppliers. In Hawaii, half of household electricity is used during solar hours, that is under the yellow curve, but the utility wants to take surplus solar production and not pay for it. So then angry customers can use smart appliances to move 80 or 90% of household loads conveniently into the solar hours, costing the utility nearly all its intended windfall and most of its ordinary revenue. Such anti-solar tariffs speed and expand solar adoption by educating and annoying the customers so they leave the grid faster, as they now can, especially as electric vehicles make the grid an optional convenience. And renewable technologies also keep improving. Taller towers and better rotors just made the US wind resource 2/3 bigger in 7 years. That has spread wind power's competitiveness from the dark blue to the light blue to the orange areas, to every US state, to every part of Germany. This often makes far away but highest quality renewables linked to cities by long new transmission lines unable to compete with lower quality renewables in or near the city. Even 5 or 6 years ago, before such options emerged, our synthesis Reinventing Fire rigorously showed how to triple US efficiency and quintuple renewables by 2050, eliminating oil, coal, and nuclear energy, and using 1/3 less natural gas, while saving $5 trillion, growing the economy 2.6-fold, strengthening national security, and cutting fossil carbon emissions by 82 to 86%, yet needing no new inventions nor acts of Congress, but with smart city and state policies led by business for profit. At the G20 3 months ago, China's National Development and Reform Commission's Energy Research Institute published its roadmap for China's energy revolution, aided by Berkeley Lab, Energy Foundation China, and Rocky Mountain Institute. It details how China can save $3.4 trillion, run a 7 times bigger economy in 2050, while using only as much energy as today, but 7 times more productively, shift supply 62% off fossil fuels, emit 38% less carbon, burn 73% less coal, and get 12 times more GDP from each ton of fossil carbon. This roadmap informed the 13th five-year plan. Now, if we extrapolate these US findings now on track and Chinese findings now adopted to the rest of the world could achieve about a 2 Celsius degree climate trajectory, $18 trillion cheaper than business as usual, even assuming no carbon price. Then reinvesting part of that saving in natural systems carbon removal could probably achieve a 1.5 degree trajectory, still with trillions of dollars left over, plus huge positive externalities, boosting most of the UN development goals, and also slashing capital needs for the power sector, even turning it into a net exporter of capital to fund other development needs. Making climate protection not costly but profitable should greatly simplify the politics, and this journey starts in cities. So let me end as I began, with energy efficiency's progress. In 1975, US government and industry said the energy needed to make $1 of GDP couldn't go down. I heretically suggested it could go down 72% in 50 years. So far, it's dropped 56% in 40 years, but now the innovations already made by 2010 can save another threefold, twice what I originally thought, at 1/3 the real cost, and 6 years later, that looks conservative. And the biggest opportunity is in our buildings. Reinventing Fire found that by 2050, at historically reasonable speeds, buildings can triple or quadruple their energy productivity, saving $1.4 trillion net present value with a 33% internal rate of return. The savings are worth 4 times their costs. So super efficient, net zero or better buildings, the integrative generative design that creates them, and the smart policies that enable them in great cities. These are the keys to a richer, fairer, cooler, safer world. I look forward to learning now from our distinguished panel of mayors how they are rising to this challenge. Thank you all for your good work and your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lovins, for that interesting presentation. We definitely have so much to learn. Okay, now it's time to hear from the political leaders who are taking on these issues every day on their own cities. We just heard about the enormous potential of action around the world, including North America and China. So I'm delighted to introduce our panelists for these regions. Mayor Emanuel of Chicago, Secretary Wong of Hong Kong, Mayor Gregor Robertson of Vancouver, and Deputy Mayor Huang of Nanjing. And to moderate this discussion, Kate Hampton, CEO of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, one of the strategic founders of C40 cities. So please welcome them to the stage.
Good afternoon. We heard from climate hero Dr. Amory Lovins about how buildings and energy are critical for a decarbonised world, and I think Deadline 2020 also made that abundantly clear. In fact, most of the reductions that are required before 2020, when we need to peak global emissions, will indeed come from energy efficiency, particularly in buildings. Dr. Lovins said, as you heard, that these are now technically and economically possible, and we need city leadership to create the right conditions for this investment to go forward. CIFF, the organisation I represent, which is one of the strategic funders of C40, is very keen to accelerate our work and global action on energy efficiency. I'd just like to draw your attention to one of the great climate successes of 2016, the Kigali Amendment under the Montreal Protocol, which called for a global freeze and phase down of HFCs. Why is this relevant to buildings efficiency? I'd just like to make the connection somewhat off script. Peak power in the summer for most cities, 40 to 60% of it is driven by space cooling. And actually, if we deliver the switch of coolants, HFCs, these super greenhouse gases, at the same time as improving energy efficiency of cooling appliances and building efficiency, we could actually achieve just from that act alone, half a degree of warming avoided. Half a degree of warming avoided, somewhere between 100 and 200 gigatons of CO2 reduction, and we wouldn't need to build 2,000 peak coal power plants between now and 2030, just by tackling energy efficiency in space cooling. So there's a huge role for cities to play just in supporting the Kigali Amendment. But there are so many more things you can do as well, not just tackling electricity within buildings, but also the energy consumed by buildings in a much more integrated way. So I'm delighted to invite all of you to talk about the work that you're doing in your iconic cities. And my first question is for Mayor Emanuel. Dr. Lovins set out how important buildings are, and you've done a huge amount to reduce emissions in this sector. Could you share some of that with us? And may I just remind the panelists, you have 5 minutes.
Is that to cut down on greenhouse gas emissions?
It is. It will reduce the CO2 in the room.
Okay.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for the question. First of all, we have an integrated approach. I'll start on the building side. We now have about 54 million square feet under retrofit, starting in both the public sector, but then challenging the private sector to participate in that effort. And we started with everything from schools to libraries to police areas to office buildings for the city of Chicago, and then challenged our private sector to join. But when you put it all together, it's about 132 buildings citywide with about 54 million square feet under retrofit, and we ever see that every year increasing. But in addition to that, that's kind of a foundation. Second, when I became mayor, there were 2 coal plants operating in the city. We're the only city with that in the United States. So I called the utility in and I said, I'd like to introduce you to natural gas. Either you'll close it or they'll close it for you. Those plants are now shut in the city of Chicago. The third thing we did was ban purchasing coal for any public building in the city of Chicago. It could not be generated by coal, any energy that we used. That also then led to things in transportation. Chicago is now the #1 city, bike-friendly city in the United States, and about 3 to 4% of the people that go to work use bikes as transportation. We have 30 to 40 electric buses. You add a couple other things that we have done on the residential side. This weekend, we're about to issue a report, but Chicago's greenhouse gas emissions over the last 4 years or 5 years is down in the double digits, 10 to 11% in the city of Chicago. And the buildings has been a major driver of that effort. And starting at the beginning of the year, we'll begin a retrofit converting all 350,000 streetlights in the city of Chicago to LED to build on our success of our commercial and public buildings. That's the effort of the city of Chicago, and we're already seeing benefits. And that is all happening, the reduction, while we've seen some of the greatest economic growth for the city since the year 2000, both in employment, in amount of new buildings going up in the city of Chicago, as well as in the amount of residential growth in the city of Chicago. So while economic activity is up, more people are in the city than ever before, employment is up, we actually seen our greenhouse gas emissions been cut by double digits, as well as embarking on, I think, a new effort as it relates to building on those foundations and going into the LED light as a contribution to what we're seeing in our building and the work we've seen in our buildings. I think I have reserved 2 minutes for my next question.
You have. I might have to give those back to you at the end. Thank you very much,
It's the first time a
Emanuel.
middle child's ever been generous.
Secretary Wong, Hong Kong has been doing a lot of work in this area as well. Do you have a particular initiative you'd like to highlight this morning?
Okay. I would like to highlight 5 points in 5 minutes. Okay. Firstly, about policy. Last May, we published an energy saving plan for Hong Kong's built environment, covering mostly buildings, but also transportation to some extent. Set a new target is to reduce Hong Kong's energy intensity by 40% by 2025, using 2005 as the base. We have different regulations to govern the building's energy performance, from the envelope to the systems, and also promoting the energy efficiency design in the retrofit, and also to some extent to require the existing buildings to do all this regularly. So those are the policies in general. Second piece about the precinct infrastructure and also planning. For some new areas in Hong Kong, we are providing district cooling system for the buildings to replace individual cooling systems. That's far more energy efficient on one hand. At the same time, that can free up the roof space of individual commercial buildings. That can be used for greening, for PV, for public space. And also, Hong Kong is a tropical city, so the district cooling can help to reduce the urban heat island effect that make Hong Kong's urban environment more climate resilient. Third is about the public sector leadership. The government says a target is to reduce the total government buildings electricity use. Say in the forthcoming 5 years, we would like to reduce by 5%. And in the past decade, we already reduced it by around 15% in the past. And also, we introduced the Green Government Building Circular that's being regularly updated to require the buildings to be energy efficient and also to be a green building, covering the new buildings and also the existing building stocks under the hands of the government. And also, under an innovation section, we encourage low-rise government buildings to try to close to zero carbon as far as appropriate. Third is about the private sector buildings. We provide incentive to them. On one hand, we provide extra floor area to encourage the new buildings to be certified to be green buildings in Hong Kong. At the same time, in the past, we have a scheme called the BEEF. It may not be the best name. It's called a Building Energy Efficiency Funding. 1 out of 7 existing buildings in Hong Kong got the funding and got the upgrade and retrofit. Last point is about the public awareness. While it's good to invest in hardware, software is important. So we have a campaign to encourage people to be more aware about the energy use. And we collaborate with the power companies. So when people get the electricity bill, they will understand that the size of their apartment and compare with, say, 100 similar apartments, and can tell you whether you are the top 20% energy saver or the worst 20%, so that you can understand your performance and encourage you to do better. At the same time, we can provide certain incentive for them to save energy more. So a combination of 5 Ps can help Hong Kong to reach our carbon intensity reduction target, 40% in a decade. Thank you.
Thank you. My goodness, this is the most efficient panel ever. Mayor Robertson, can you talk about what you're proud of in Vancouver?
Sure, thank you. Well, impressive achievements in Chicago and Hong Kong, and I'd say we're part of that pattern where, as a city, we became focused on a big goal to be the greenest city in the world. Shortly after I became mayor, we've been on that trajectory, and green buildings are obviously an essential piece of that, as 55% of our emissions and our climate pollution come from our buildings. We adopted a 100% renewable strategy this year that basically sets us on that course to be all forms of energy used in the city of Vancouver 100% renewable as soon as possible, no later than 2050 is what we're estimating. And it will hinge largely on buildings and transportation, no surprise there. We have this year approved a zero-emission building policy where by 2030, all new buildings in the city of Vancouver must be zero emissions. And that is a piece that from here to there, we've worked out with industry an approach where it steps down. The emissions are being tracked, and we'll step that down over the coming years. I think a very constructive partnership with industry. We have the benefit of being similar to Chicago. I think to all of our cities, we've been booming. We've had enormous economic growth at the same time that we are reducing emissions. Again, our stats are 30% economic growth since 2007, and we're at 14% reduction in our emissions since 2007. Actually, 20% reduction from buildings since 2007. So industry is already embracing the opportunity. We're seeing lots of leaders emerge, realizing that the life cycle costs of their buildings will be reduced in the process of investing for the long term. We're seeing passive house type technology emerge as a new standard in keeping with the zero emission buildings policy. So I think we're in a time of real momentum on this, which is encouraging. We don't need to cool our buildings as much as we need to heat them due to our climate locally, but we're focused as a city on producing district heat from renewable sources wherever possible, and that's we now have millions of square feet that are in our current district energy system heated by sewer heat that's recaptured. We're also looking at several more, scaling up our transition from fossil fuel-based heat that heats the buildings currently. Natural gas is the standard in Vancouver, but we need to see that phased out over these coming decades, and there may be a role for natural gas if it's renewably generated, biogas, for example, but fossil fuel-derived natural gas, we want transitioned out. And then it hasn't been easy. We've had some pushback even this week at City Hall from natural gas providers. They're realizing that the shift is on and their business is going to need to change accordingly. They already generate renewable natural gas, but they have to focus on that more if they're to have a role to play in heating the buildings of the city. It's critical, the energy efficiency piece is critical really for a combination of renewable fuels and energy efficiency, which we know we can achieve, and pioneers like Dr. Amory Lovins and many others who've paved the way here are giving us the confidence and the momentum that we can do this on a very aggressive timeline.
Very positive news. Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Huang, can you share the policies in Nanjing for us, please?
Thank you. Only 5 minutes. Please allow me to speak Chinese.
That's okay.
很高兴和各位市长一起来交流。我们南京市是去年加入的 C40。我们加入 C40 以后呢 ，C40 也给了我们很多的鼓励。我们去年在巴黎，我们得到了 C40 颁发的一个新能源汽车推广项目的城市奖。这个奖励呢，给了我们很大的鼓励。我们在城市的可持续发展，在节能减排上面，我们做了大量的工作。我想和大家分享我们其中9个方面的工作。第一个方面呢，是我们推进我们的生产力布局的调整，推进我们老工业基地的改造。我们前5年，我们有700多个企业搬离了主城区，搬到了工业集中区，进行了这个排放的整治，这个提升了排放的标准。第二呢，是我们提高我们这个排污企业的这个排污成本。我们按照这个国家中央政府的要求，我们在我们的这个主要污染物减排上，出台了一系列的政策，包括提高排污收费的标准。我们针对12项主要重金属和这个碳排放大气排放的这个相关指标挥发性有机物的指标提高了收费标准，引导企业加大治理减少对环境的污染。第3个方面的工作呢，是我们推进燃煤电厂这个污染减排。南京有600多万千瓦的机组是通过煤炭的燃烧来发电的，那么每年呢对空气污染呢造成了很大的困扰。那么从2011年开始，我们鼓励企业鼓励发电企业加大治理，推进了脱硫脱硝和烟尘的这个排放的降低。我们到昨天到2016年的11月份，我们所有大机组全部实现了这个减排的改造，排放的标准呢已经达到了中国的这个燃气电厂，就是烧天然气的电厂的排放标准。第4个方面呢，是我们加大城市机动车的污染治理。我们对不符合中国政府的绿色标准的汽车排放的这样的车辆，在城市的主要区域限制行驶，并且鼓励车主主动淘汰，政府给予补贴。近年来我们加大了力度，我们一共淘汰了6万6千辆黄标车，也就是说达不到绿色排放标准的车。第5个方面的工作是我们推进秸秆禁烧。我们农作物收割了以后，有很多这个农作物的秸秆，这些秸秆呢，农民呢原来是自行处理的，那么在政府的推动下，现在把这些秸秆全部收集起来，加以综合利用。到目前为止，我们综合利用呢，利用率始终保持在85%以上，对环境的改善也做出了贡献。第6个方面呢，是我们推进我们的水环境整治。我们把南京市220公里的主要的城市人口密集区域的这个220平方公里分成了4000多个排水达标区，一个达标区的去推进我们雨水和污水的分流，更好的提高污水的搜集和处理的效率，这个促成了我们城市的水环境的改善。第7个方面呢，是我们在试行我们的碳排放和排污权的交易。1年多以来，我们已经推进了150个工业项目，在新上项目的时候，要到交易所去购买排放权，买到了排放权才可以这个开始投资，才可以建设项目。这样呢，引导企业提升环保意识，也为我们城市呢控制污染总量这个起到了很好的作用。第8个方面的工作呢，是我们 建立冬季和春季大气污染的管控措施。我们这个城市冬季和春季呢，基本上这个空气流动、空气风就是风比较少，我们叫静稳天气比较多，那么不利于这个空气的流动，不利于污染的这个治理。所以呢，我们在冬春季，我们制定了企业、区域和市民共同参与的污染管控的措施。在空气质量指数达到一定的指数的时候，我们会对部分的排污项目、排污企业进行限制，大家也共同来参与，共同来参与。在一定的时候呢，我们限制个人驾驶汽车，鼓励大家用公共交通，这样呢，在冬季和春季使我们的这个空气质量得到了明显的改善。最后一个方面呢，是我们的绿色交通，我们在绿色交通方面，除了我们以轨道交通为主，我们发展了220多公里的城市的地铁，我们还推广我们的新能源的汽车。我们现在城市1万台公交车有55%都是清洁能源的汽车和电动车，另外呢，我们开展了绿色出行的行动。我们从今年的3月份开始，我们鼓励市民，通过乘公交、骑公共自行车，包括步行来减少碳排放。据我们统计，从3月份到现在，每天有700个市民在加入，每个月有2万多市民在加入，也为节能减排做了这个积极的贡献。下一步呢，我们还想在学习大家的这个好经验、好做法的基础上，我们再进一步的努力，使我们这个城市更加绿色。谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now going to have one of those polling moments to hear from urban practitioners in the audience and other cities who are present. So our Summit opinion polling app is going to ask you the question, what is the most important action to reduce emissions from buildings? So the first option is deep retrofits of existing buildings. Zero carbon standards for new buildings is the second, and then renewable energy generation. And if you just can't be bothered, you can say all three matter equally. That's fine too. The results will be coming out at the end of the session, so we're going to have a bit more conversation with our panelists. And I'm going to let you know that some of the mayors were significantly under time, and one of the mayors was somewhat over time, so we can be a little bit more generous with a couple of you. But Vice Mayor Huang, because you were getting into some interesting stuff on your work in Nanjing, could you give us any particular examples of implementation that you're particularly proud of? And then we'll go to the others.
谢谢，我就跟大家再说一下我们怎么鼓励市民来参与绿色出行。我们这个推进这个项目的这个主要的特点呢，就是公众参与，大家共同参与来推进环境的改善。那么要参与这个项目呢，主要是要利用我们城市已经有的和我们在进一步改善的一个城市的我们叫智慧城市的一个信息化的这个基础，利用这个基础，利用我们对这个市民的出行的习惯和出行的方式的信息的了解，我们给市民以鼓励。我们项目是共同参与，但是项目的这个内容呢，主要是在大家乘公交、在乘地铁、在骑公共自行车、在步行这些方面呢，我们对这些行为给予鼓励，我们记录下这些行为的数据，然后我们给大家做碳积分，我们给大家每一次行为我们都积分，因为要给大家积分，所以我自己也在积分，我向大家报告，我从3月份到现在，我已经积了460多分，每乘一次公交是1分，每乘一次地铁是1分，每步行5000步是1分，我做的还很不够，我们有的市民已经到了几千分了，那么我们建了一个信息化的平台， 那么每一个市民都可以在这个平台上能够看到能够看到自己有多少分，可以看到全市有多少人在参与全市到今天已经有多少人参与，已经累计已经有多少分了。我们这个平台到目前为止，我们向大家报告一下，我们的记录的总的出行是5800万人次，5800万人次。我们每天我们这个平台的点击的量大约在100万次，大约在100万次。我们下面还要进一步鼓励更多的市民，共同来参与，共同来保护我们的环境，共同来建设我们的绿色家园。我们也想通过和 C40的交流，我们能够和更多的城市一起来共同的推进，一起来共同推进。我们也希望呢 C40在明年的工作的安排上，能够有一些专项，我们南京能够作为中国内地的城市，能够更紧密的参与到和我们城市的互动当中。谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you.
That sounds like an exciting innovation to help citizens track their own behaviours. Mayor Emanuel, you were incredibly efficient on your first answer, so I can speed in the next 30 seconds if you like. But you're famous for collecting and publishing data on energy use. Can you talk about why that's been so important to Chicago?
Well, before I do that, I would like to offer my colleague from Nanjing. I take the train 3 times a week, so you can use my points from now on. I don't want to see you not do as well as you should be doing, so you can use my points. I actually do want to say one other thing before I get. I had mentioned that we're going to, starting in January, we're going to do LED lighting throughout the city of Chicago. And why these conferences are important, that idea was originally, we had a conference in Chicago, and I took from my good friend, the mayor of Vancouver, in 2012. And I want to give him credit for something that Chicago is doing and embarking on. And so sometimes these conferences, I'm using all the time that you gave me, sometimes these conferences are about preaching to the choir, but they are actually helpful in learning what other cities are doing to meet challenges. And the LED lighting, we're about to embark on citywide for about 350,000 streetlights, was an idea that the mayor from Vancouver offered in a conference we held in Chicago. So these are very helpful in, we're all facing similar challenges, but I also say those challenges are opportunities. And if ours is successful, I'll take credit. If it's a failure, I'll blame the mayor of Vancouver for that idea. One of the things that we also embarked on is the power of information. And so not only what we're doing on the retrofit from a commercial building, a public sector building, we also wanted to encourage a private sector. And so we said if you're going to sell apartments, or rather condos, apartments, homes, you have to list which is a benchmark on energy usage. What we found out in the last 3 years since it's been implemented, the homes that benchmarked sold quicker, sold for more money than the other homes in the areas that were not part of benchmarking. And so using information was a powerful tool in incentivizing those who were selling, either private owners or people in apartment buildings or condos, to adopt energy efficiency, because once the information was public, people were starting to demand that information before they bought the home. We have seen about 2,700 buildings adopt that benchmarking with about $18 million in energy savings. But again, the properties flip quicker in time. They're on the market for less time, obviously, and they go for greater value than homes, condos that do not share that information. And so we've used that benchmarking throughout the city. Not a different, I may joked with my colleague, but giving information publicly and incentivizing the behavior aligns both economic interests with public information. And that's been an effort. Second, let me also add, I didn't put this up, we have a plan on our parks. So not only what we're doing in our homes, we have rebuilt every playground in the city of Chicago, all 325 totally new. We've added, and we're in the process where we're going to add about 2,020 acres of new parks in the city of Chicago, green space. So improving both the public health and the quality of life, but also using that to complement everything we're doing on biking and running and open space. That complements what we're doing on the housing, on the energy efficiency, which is all complementary to when we close the 2 coal-fired power plants. And it's called Building on Burnham, Daniel Burnham, who was the original designer of the city of Chicago, the city in the garden. And so we have opened up, and we're in the process, but by 2020, but rather 2020, we'll add 2,020 acres to a base of 7,000 acres of open land, and every playground in the city has been totally rebuilt. And now we're adding more and more buildings to the benchmarking of public information, and 22,000 separate individual residential homes have been totally retrofitted to complement what we've done on the commercial space. But giving that information publicly, requiring it to be there, aligns those who own it to be more energy efficient and adopt energy efficient policies.
Thank you, Mayor Emanuel. Mayor Robertson, I've been told that you've been building the capacity of the construction sector. That sounds very interesting. Could you share some of that experience?
Sure. Yeah, we're blessed to have some amazing green building leaders in Vancouver. We've had a great surge of knowledge and practice in the city, and that's expanded. I think lots of Vancouver architects and designers and engineers work around the world in helping to advance the craft. And as we looked at our 2030 zero emission building strategy, we wanted to be sure that we created what we're calling a zero emission building center of excellence, so that independent from the city, but obviously we want this to lobby the city. We want this to enable all of those in the construction industry and development to be able to work to facilitate this big transition, getting to zero emission buildings as readily as possible. So it's the city supporting that effort to make sure that there is a center of excellence in this, and at the same time that it's independent and it's able to keep pressure on the city to stay on our goals, to expedite projects. The big tension that we face in the city right now is not enough affordable housing, and I know this affects most of our big cities here, and there's been suggestions that, well, how do you have affordable housing if you have to do green buildings? And I think we've been doing a lot of myth busting on that, and when you look at life cycle cost of buildings, it's very clear that going to zero emission, going to green and healthy buildings is actually saving money, and it's more affordable over the life cycle of the building. Savings in energy costs, productivity is increased, health is improved. So we want to be sure that there's deep alignment between our zero emission building strategy and maintaining our focus on affordable housing. That's a huge priority for Vancouver. And we don't see a problem there. We actually see synergy. And that piece of ensuring that we're achieving affordability as we transition to zero emissions is going to be really essential, I think, to our overall success. And we're going to rely heavily on the work that Hong Kong's done on energy efficiency and retrofitting, the work that's done in cities around the world. We need to be on the same page and raising the bar together, and that's a big part of this.
Thank you very much. And Secretary Wong, you're all referring to each other. It's great to see so much sharing of information. So you're planning to reduce emissions per capita, and we saw in Deadline 2020 just how important that is. Can you talk about how you're going about doing that?
Okay. Before the Paris Summit held late last year, we published the Hong Kong's Climate Change Report 2015, summarizing what Hong Kong have been doing about mitigation and also adaptation and resilience. Currently, Hong Kong's per person's annual carbon footprint is about 6 tons per person. And we have target is to reduce the carbon footprint by 2020 to around 5 tons per person per day, per year. And then we're going to have our new climate plan to be launched soon that will further decarbonize the per capita footprint. But we have to understand what are the major carbon footprint sectors in the context of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a very compact city, high-rise, use less land for more population. Hong Kong currently has 7.3 million people, conserving around 70% of the land area as the rural area and country parks, and enjoy a very highly efficient transportation means. 90% of the commuting by public means. walkable and by subway, by buses and others. But the result is that the majority of the carbon footprint are building related, okay, accounting for about 60%. So the future effort is focusing on how to upgrade the buildings. You mentioned about the new homes, and where policy is that for all the affordable public homes to be built in the, say, coming decade, amounting to about 300,000, not a lot, all have to meet the second highest level of the green building labeling under the Hong Kong system. That means even for the affordable homes, they have to be affordable, at the same time to be green and energy efficient. But similar to many other mature cities, how to deal with the existing building stock is the major challenge if we like to decarbonize and save energy. In Hong Kong, the commercial buildings accounts for about 60% of the energy use in Hong Kong. So we have a new initiative called the 4Ts, is to work with the private sectors, in particular the major developers and also the major organizations, to set targets, having the timelines, say, similar to the Paris Agreement, say, forthcoming 5 years, and to have a high transparency, information can empower the people and companies and work together. So they can make reference to Hong Kong government's target and timeline is to reduce our overall electricity consumption by 5% in the forthcoming 5 years. So we are working with the commercial sectors. They are equivalent to about 40% of the commercial energy use in total. So that means if this dialogue and partnership can be successful, that is equivalent to about a quarter of the electricity consumption in Hong Kong's context. So we are going to make the final deal with them and to be announcing the result very soon. That would be pretty encouraging. That means through a kind of voluntary scheme and dialogue, we can set very clear target within timelines and through higher transparency, and together we can reduce significantly the overall power consumption. And most of them are related to the existing commercial buildings. The likely material could be, say, in the order similar to that pledged by the Hong Kong government. So this is the 40 initiative that is on top of the energy saving plan that we launched earlier, that we can further decarbonize Hong Kong's carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you. Very exciting. And great to hear you reference the targets and timetables of the Paris Agreement. We're now going to get the polling results. Are they appearing behind me? We'll see if everyone agrees with you, Secretary Wong, about retrofits. There you go. It appears that the audience does. 56% deep retrofits of buildings. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask if you would like to comment on the results at all. Would anyone like to say whether they agree, disagree on the results?
I mean, look, all I'll say is it's not a surprise at one level. It's kind of, when you started the panel and we talked about it earlier, you got to, you know, there's a Dillinger once said in America, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. And that's where, if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, you got to go where the greatest emissions are, which is in the buildings, and the retrofit is going to do the greatest savings. And it's, I don't mean to say this, but it's the lowest hanging fruit. And if you make that, you can have the greatest impact. And then you have a forward momentum for the rest of the sectors of the economy that you want to see. It can actually pull the rest of the economy. And I also think beyond energy use, the last thing I'll say, every one of the data points show you can achieve these goals quicker, faster, with a greater return. And I actually think we're actually underperforming in the sense of expectation as we realize now that you can achieve our goals on reduction of greenhouse gases quicker on time with greater savings at a faster time. And I actually think that's the promise of the retrofit.
Any others?
I might just add, because we've obviously, we're doing all of the above, and I think it's tough to choose when in fact you need to do all of the above. And that's where, you know, as I hear the comments of fellow mayors, we talk about green buildings, but then you have to talk about transportation, you have to talk about energy generation, you have to talk about green space, and that's the nature of our work and the work of us all in the city arena. We have to be focused on a whole array of actions at once. It's not picking one and running with it until we can finish it. And that's, particularly in the cities, credit to cities. Vancouver has generations and a geography that makes it easier than most to do the work that we're doing. Cities like Chicago and the leadership of Mayor Emanuel, cities like Nanjing, which obviously both very heavy industry cities historically, it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of tenacity to deliver on big change in cities that came through much more different past. And Hong Kong and Vancouver, I think, similar in that we're much denser and we have some efficiencies that we can gain from that. But we have to be doing all of the above with these goals. And I think that's good to focus where the low-hanging fruit is for sure, but make sure we shouldn't keep building buildings that are not to a poor standard. At this point, we know we can do it, and we just need to set the rules and make sure industry delivers.
Just to supplement that, while I talk about the 40s initiative in Hong Kong and also promoting retrofitting, but retrofitting is a general term that we are talking with the developers to do more frequent audit and also retro commissioning. Retro commissioning could be a simpler means to understand the performance of the systems of the buildings, but through a simple fixing that can enjoy a much higher energy efficiency, but with just limited input of resources. So that's useful tools for them to upgrade the buildings before talking about retrofits. So certainly we talk about different means for different buildings to understand their different contexts so that they can harness the best results through the analysis.
Vice Mayor, did you have any comments on the voting or any final comments?
我们两个方面吧，一个是我们新建筑，我们在努力的在推进我们绿色建筑的这个标准的采用。按照我们国家的要求呢，我们新建的建筑65%要达到绿色建筑的标准。在我们这个城市，我们提倡是100%都要是绿色建筑。第二呢，就是我们存量的建筑。刚才我们香港的黄先生也讲，我们存量的建筑的这个能耗是个大问题。我们要改造我们的原来的这个就是低标准的这些建筑通过我们的技术标准的提升，通过政府的资助，通过社会的参与，包括一些新技术的应用，我们能够使我们存量的大量的建筑能够逐步的接近，或者说能够做到低碳，能够做到节能，能够做到节能。所以我们希望呢，我们城市在建筑节能这一块呢，能够还有很大的空间，我们会更加努力。谢谢。
Thank you. Well, I think Dr. Lovins, and I'm kind of keen to know what Dr. Lovins would have voted for. I'm guessing number 4, am I right? Yes, he's nodding, integrated solutions. But it's great to hear people talk about changing expectations, that we can be much more ambitious than previously thought, and not just on technological grounds, but because the benefits are so huge. We've heard about jobs, we've heard about livable cities, and the opportunities for collaboration with the construction sector and with real estate developers, so that's hugely positive. And some great examples of policy packages, improving regulation, auditing, use of data. There's an abundance of offer here, which I hope all the cities will have an opportunity to share with each other. So a fascinating conversation, I think everyone will agree. And I'd just like to thank Dr. Lovins, Mayor Emanuel, Secretary Wong, Mayor Robertson and Vice Mayor Huang for inspiring us today, and I hope you take this challenge forward so that we can peak global emissions by 2020 and make a safer future for all of us and our children. Thank you.